Hello and what is up? It's your boy Real_Joshua, and today we are going to be talking about the Gundam Card Game. In this video, I'm going to teach you not only how to play the Gundam Card Game, but I'm also going to talk a bit about whether the game is worth getting into or not. I'm going to talk about what makes it unique, as well as how you might get into the game if you are thinking of doing so. That being said, this is not just a video for people who are looking to get into the Gundam Card Game. It's also for people who have no intention of getting into the game, because at least for me, when a new card game comes out, I'm interested in learning how it works, even if I have no intention of getting into its ecosystem. First off, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. I primarily cover One Piece here, but I do intend on doing some Gundam content, so keep an eye out for that. Anyway, without further ado, let's get right into it. Please note that I'm only teaching a very high-level overview of how this game is played. I just want it to be a quick overview of the mechanics and what makes it different from other card games I've played before. Now, the Gundam Card Game works with a 50-card deck. You can run up to 2 colors in your deck. That is the only deck building restriction. There is no penalty for having 2 different colors in your deck, so I recommend you always have 2 colors because there is no penalty. On your turn, you gain a resource card every turn, and these can be used to play your cards. The first thing that we should know is that in order to play your cards, they don't just have a cost, they also have a level. This card, the Gym, has level 2 and a cost of 1. That means that we cannot play it until we are level 2, but don't worry, it's not that complex. Your level is simply the amount of resource cards that you have on your field at any given time. So if we already have 2 resources on our field, we are able to play this for a cost of 1, so we don't have to worry about that. The object of the game is to get your opponents down to 0 shields. You actually start with 6 shields, as well as a base which protects your shields. It has 3 HP, but the way that you do that is by continuously attacking them. Let's say you've taken out their base, you've attacked it for 3, because this base has 3 health. Then you would attack your opponent 6 times. Every time you attack it, it takes 1 damage. That is to say, every time an attack successfully goes through, no matter how much damage that attack is for, they lose 1 shield. When they lose a shield, that card would typically be trashed unless it has burst printed on the card. This card has the burst effect of add this card to your hand, so if I was to take this damage, I would then add this to my hand. This is different from One Piece because you typically in One Piece take the cards that you take as damage into your hand. In this game, they just go into your trash unless they have a burst effect, in which case the burst effect goes off. So let's say you've attacked your opponent down to 0 health. Those would mostly go into the trash except the one that had the burst effect, and then you attack them one more time, then you would win the game. It's that simple. Obviously the combat is a little bit more complex than that, but that's the basic rules of how you would play this game. There are a couple interesting wrinkles to how we play the Gundam Card Game. First is when you start, you draw your 5 cards to your hand, and you can mulligan in this game, but you have to mulligan your entire hand. And if you choose to mulligan, you would put these 5 cards at the bottom of your deck. Then you would get the top 5 cards from your deck, and that would be your opening hand. After that, you would shuffle your deck, and then you would place your base cards and the game would start. You kind of have a better idea of what your 5 cards are going to be because whatever hand you mulligan, you cannot draw those cards because you're putting them at the bottom of your deck and then drawing off the top. So you know those cards are not going to be in your opening hand. And that gives you a bit more information to give you a little bit more knowledge when you mulligan. There is actually another interesting wrinkle to this system that I forgot to explain. And that is that the person who goes second actually gets access to the EX resource, which automatically gets put into their resource pile on their first turn. So on their first turn, both the first and second player will draw a card. Then the person who's going second will get access to a resource, but they also have access to this EX resource. And the interesting thing is that once this EX resource is used, it actually disappears from the game. It's put off to the side. The player who goes second has access to the EX resource and therefore starts the game at level 2. So the person who is going first will only be at level 1 when they start. But for me, as player 2, I could actually play this Gym due to the fact that I start out at level 2. So I could spend this resource to play my Gym, which is a 1-cost card, and I could pass, choosing not to spend this EX resource and keeping it in my pool. The next turn, if I wanted to have a really powerful turn, I could do something interesting like spend 2 resource to play a gun cannon, and then spend my EX resource to then play a Zaku 1 on the field. And all those would be doable because on that turn I would have 3 resources, I would be level 3, and I can play both of these and have essentially a burst of power on this turn. But until you spend that EX resource, you're always going to be a level ahead of your opponent, which is a really interesting benefit to going second in this game. One other thing that makes this game unique is the pilot system. Here is Char's Zaku 2. There are different types of cards in this game. There are units, which are essentially like your characters or your creatures. There are also command cards, which are like your events or your spells in another game. And then there are these pilot cards. These can be paired with your units. Any pilot can be paired with any unit, but you cannot play a pilot by itself onto the field. Let's say I was to play a Char's Zaku 2, I could then pair that with Char the pilot, and what happens when we pair a pilot and a unit together is that it gains the stats from the pilot that we pair it with. So Char's Zaku 2 is a 3-2, we would add 1-1, so it become a 4-3. At the bottom of every unit card, you see this little link descriptor here. If there is any text here, that means we can link this character with any pilot that has these traits. The link condition for this card is Char as Nabal, so that means that this links with Char. That means it is a special pairing, and it means that we can then attack with this card on the turn that it is played. Typically, our units have summoning sickness, aka they cannot attack their turn when they're played, but if we link it, we get all of the link conditions and we can attack with the unit on the turn it's played. In addition, there are very powerful link effects that only activate when we pair specific units with their designated pilots. So keep that in mind. That is another interesting mechanic of this game to look out for. Oh, there are also base cards like this one. Typically what happens with your base is that you will pay the cost of the base. You'll put that on top of your shield cards. And then for pretty much every base that exists right now, you draw the top card of your shields. So you lose a shield every time you play a base, but a base is almost worth 2 shields because it has a specific amount of HP, right? So if you get hit for less than that amount of HP, it's essentially absorbing 2 hits. A shield could potentially absorb up to 5 hits if each hit is for 1 HP. The damage in this game is persistent, similar to Magic or Hearthstone. If you have a 1-1 facing off against a 2-2, note that you can only attack into units that are already rested. So let's say I was to attack the Dop with my Gym. I would declare that I am attacking the Dop with my Gym. The damage would go through simultaneously. This would take 1 damage, making it a 2-1, and this would take 2 damage, and since it only has 1 health, it would die. And this would be a 2-1 until it is killed. So all damage is persistent, comparable to a lot of other card games, but stuff like One Piece does not work like this, for instance. That pretty much covers the basics of how the Gundam card game works. There are all sorts of keywords and interesting interactions, but for now, the game is actually pretty simple to get into. If you do need more insight on how the game works, you should check out the many how to play Gundam card game videos that are already out there, but I hope this gives you a better idea of the more unique mechanics to this game. Now that you know the basics of how to play the game, let's talk a bit about the pros and cons of the Gundam card game. The first pro is that this game is easy right now. Well, it's not easy, but it is still in its infancy, and we're only in set 1, so there aren't like a million cards that you always have to be playing around. If you've ever played a set 1 of a card game before, you know that this is a very freeing feeling. It feels like you could play at a very high level from the outset. For me, I actually topped the very first event that I went to. It was only like a 32-person local, and by topped, I mean I got 9th place, which was actually enough to get me prizing. After that, in my second ever event, I played a deck I had never played before. It was a 48-person event, and I got 2nd. That won me half a box, as well as a winner pack that had like a $50 card in it. All the cards that I got in the packs that I opened ended up being worth like another $200. So I really came up there. It was an awesome experience, and I actually topped another event right after that. So yeah, it felt like with this deck that I was running that not many other people were running, it felt like I could really do well in these events, even though I didn't have that much experience as a player and I haven't been playing for like a super long time. And a big part of that is because nobody has been playing for a very long time just yet. The second thing that I really like about this game is that there is so much room for experimentation. Because card draw tends to be very difficult to come across in the Gundam card game, if you have a hand that's just full of pilots, you can get really screwed over. Every card has its own importance, but you really need the right mix and ratios of things, so it feels like a lot of decks are still being figured out and there is a lot of space there. This is a deck builder's game, and it feels like there is still so much left to be discovered. The game started out with the control build of blue-white blockers being the best deck in the game, but now we've seen aggro rise to prominence, and it's had a few effects, one of which is going to be the next pro. The next pro of this game is that it is not that expensive to get into. Granted, that does not mean it is easy to get cards, but there are aggro options that you can pay relatively little for to build an entire deck. Some decks out there can run you around $50 to $80 to build from the ground up, which for a brand new card game is really freaking good. The next thing I really like about this game is that we are in on the ground floor. Yes, it is difficult to get product right now, but the product that you do get could potentially hold its value. With One Piece, the stuff from set 1 ended up being pretty short printed, and so it was really rare and hard to come across, and it went up in value quite a bit over the time that the game was out. With the first set already out in Gundam and the first set of starter decks already out, I have a feeling that these cards are going to go up in value over time just because they have such powerful multi-purpose effects that I can see being relevant for many sets to come. Do not take this as financial advice. All this stuff being said, it is not all butterflies and rainbows in the world of the Gundam card game. Let's talk a bit about the cons of the game. One of the biggest cons for the Gundam card game right now is that it is very difficult to get your hands on product. As Bandai tends to do, it short printed the crap out of the first set, so getting your hands on some of those LRs, which are essentially the more rare cards of the set, can be very, very difficult. Some of these can run you up to 40 to 50 bucks, and when the set first came out, these were like $70 cards at times. A lot of these prices have gone down, but to build a deck that runs a lot of legend rares, it can be pretty expensive. That being said, you do not have to get a deck full of LRs, and you can build a relatively cheap deck that is very powerful. So don't let that bother you too much, especially if you're an aggro player. The second thing that I see as a con of the Gundam card game is the fact that there is no sim. For me, as a content creator who makes One Piece content, I use the OPTCG sim all the time to make my content. And the fact that we don't have that means that we can only play physical, which to me makes it more difficult to create content on a consistent basis. And in general, I find that people are less interested in the over-the-board play than they are in the digital play. A lot of this is because you need to have really high production value to make physical card play visually interesting, and I just do not have access to that right now. I think this might be the case for a lot of creators, and so the creator ecosystem may suffer a bit as a result of this, and it also makes it harder to experiment with new decks, because I know that when I'm playing One Piece, I can just hop in the simulator and test stuff out that way, but in this game, you kind of have to do some theory crafting and play a lot of webcam games and hope it works. The final thing that I would, I guess, consider to be a con about the Gundam card game is that it's still in its first set, so we have no clue how it's going to do. It could do great, it could gain a massive following, or it could kind of fizzle out, and that's kind of a bummer of a thing to think about with the card game. That being said, I'm really enjoying playing it in this set 1, and I don't think that the game's unproven future is a reason to not enjoy it in the present. So, with all of that said, I hope you have a better idea of how the Gundam card game works, whether or not you want to get into it. If you have any questions about the Gundam card game, please let me know down in the comments. If there's anything you would like to see me cover, any deck builds, I would love to cover this game a bit more on the side. So let me know what kind of content you would like to see when it comes to Gundam. And yeah, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Later.